Hello and good morning. This is our first live broadcast on LinkedIn. I was recently accepted into the beta and finally got it set up and ready to go for 2020. There's going to be a lot of stuff going on in 2020. A lot of career tips, job search strategies, and different things that we'll be diving into. Now that we have a live broadcast, we'll be doing a lot more interactive stuff, live Q&As, anything that we want to do where we're kind of maybe jointly looking at resumes or different things like that. What I wanted to do is sort of see how this worked out this morning, do a little bit of a short stream. Wish everyone a happy new year, and I'm excited to go deeper in 2020. All right, we are live on LinkedIn, January 2nd, 2020. So I've been doing these videos just as like regular videos, typically on a daily basis from my phone. So every day, LinkedIn shares some new news and views. And I always find that there's something in there, or usually every day there's something in there about jobs. So I like to share whatever the career focus stuff is that's in there. One of the things that I saw in the feed today, because there actually weren't too many job related posts, is Illinois rings in legal pot use. A move officials say will help individuals find jobs and obtain financial aid for college. This is awesome in a lot of different respects for the job search. Number one, tons of new job opportunities in Chicago. And it reminds me of years ago, someone had reached out to me, and I met with someone who was very entrepreneurial. She was super excited to graduate in 2 years, and she really wanted to get into the cannabis industry. And she was worried. She was worried because she didn't know if she was studying the right stuff in order to enter into that industry. And it was the first time that I'd ever encountered someone who was trying to break into the pot biz. And so we ended up talking at length about what she might be able to do to get ready to break into that industry, considering the fact that it was illegal at the time in Chicago for another, 7 years or something like that. And we just had to like brainstorm. And I was like, all right, well, what are some of the things that you could potentially do? She's like, well, I want to get to Denver because it's going to be legal there, or maybe it already was. And but she's like, but I got to finish school and I'm not studying the right things. I'm like, well, what are you studying? She was studying entrepreneurship. And basically what we came down to was, well, how can you get experience in the, plant industry? How can you start getting experience with growing and different things like that? And one of the things that we kind of touched on was the fact that there are tons and tons of rooftop gardens in Chicago. So although pot was illegal and cannabis wasn't an industry she could enter while she was at DePaul, she could get heavily involved in the, rooftop growing community and the sort of like farm tech community that does exist in the city farming, different types of indoor growing. There's a lot of different things in the city that she could do that would be really good for her resume, for her online brand, for her work experience, that in 5 to 10 years would make her stand out when she tries to enter the industry that she wants to be a part of. Fast forward to today, I haven't spoken to her in years, but now that it's legal here, maybe she's already in California or Denver or something like that. But if she is still in Chicago, she might have a really detailed background in farming and growing and different things like that in the city, and could leverage that experience into this new, recently legalized, as of yesterday, industry. So for anyone who's out there and they don't feel like they have a direct link into the job that they want, like maybe you want to work at Tesla, but you can't get a job there immediately, how can you get into the category, into the genre, into the industry of what you're interested in, even if it's ancillary, even if it's not direct? How can you sort of figure out how to get into that orbit? And that's the way that I want us to start thinking about things as we enter into 2020. So congrats on everyone who was really excited about this law being passed. Good luck to everyone starting new businesses in this new industry. And what a weird time to be alive in Chicago. I'm curious to see how this is going to impact things culturally and stuff like that as well. We're pretty much a big pizza and drinking city, so maybe this will shift things up a bit. When your interview is an audition, employers are looking to speed up the hiring process and may ask job applicants to try out roles by completing assignments. A company can quickly determine whether a person can do the job, and while these job auditions can be small tasks, job seekers say that some employers ask for projects requiring substantial time commitments. Some feel that companies are more interested in free labor than hiring, and to avoid being taken advantage of, one career expert suggests doing your homework on employers, asking questions, and negotiating the terms of the test. Some interesting tips there, but I want to break this down piece by piece. The first thing here is employers are looking to speed up the hiring process. They might say that, right? But for anyone who is looking for a job or who has been looking for a job, you'll know that the job application process has only gotten more complex and is only taking more time than ever before. I think something like a 6-month average is super normal now. And a company, or for a job search, and a company that's trying to hire is going to take multiple months and probably up to 3 or 4, maybe even more interviews in order to figure out whether or not you're the right candidate. Now, this kind of goes against a lot of what we think about and know and hear when it comes to something like the book Blink by Malcolm Gladwell, where, first impressions are pretty spot on. So how can we keep putting people through this rigmarole? How can we keep trying to, hedge our bets and figure it out before we hire? It's almost as though a lot of these companies forget that they're allowed to fire people. And that's what Gary Vaynerchuk would say. He's like, I hire quickly and I fire quickly. Rather than waste all the time, effort on the front end, you save it on the back end by just making sure that, well, if they're not right for the job, they're not right for the job, and you can always move on. And I think that's something that a lot of employers forget, but it's also something a lot of people forget when they're applying for jobs, is that you can always leave that role if it's not right. And so you can take a few chances in your career, especially early on, but throughout your career, you can take chances. But that comes to this next point, which is job auditions, right? If you have a very traditional mindset, you're not going to want to change jobs very often, right? And if you don't want to change jobs very often, your skill of finding a job is going to atrophy. And so there's things that you can do, such as these job auditions. You can actually do this on your own before you ever get an interview. You can take these online, you can actually go to the websites where they do these things and try and answer the questions. A big thing that's coming down the pipeline for interviews is the one-way video interview. Now, how do you practice for a one-way video interview? I can tell you from firsthand experience, when I did a one-way video interview for the first time, it gave me a lot of anxiety. I was kind of freaking out over it. And I'm someone who makes videos on a fairly regular basis, but I've always made videos with like a script and like kind of knowing what I was going to say. And so when you sit down and there's literally a counter in the top right part of the screen and it's saying like you have 10 seconds left to answer, I start getting a little anxious, right? And I'm like, this is going to be recorded. And I only have so many chances to record it. And so one of the things that you can do is what I'm doing. You can practice by doing live video on your own. You can actually download software that they use and just do it on your own. You can just record yourself on your cell phone answering questions and listen back to it. There's a lot of things that we can do to get better at these, quote, job auditions. And then I want to get a little more specific because I think the other thing here is these job auditions can be small tasks and things like that. So for a UX designer, they might ask you to wireframe something, or for a developer, they might ask you to do a take-home challenge. There's all these different things. And, the point down here, it says to avoid being taken advantage of, one career expert suggests doing your homework on employers, asking questions, and negotiating the terms of the test. I think that's good advice, but it is pretty expert level advice. Like if you're able to counter and negotiate and ask questions and set terms, you're probably in a pretty good spot overall in your interviewing abilities. If you're able to do that without having a complete anxiety attack, from what I've seen with most job seekers, or without ruining your chances and coming off as like standoffish and things like that. So I think it's good advice, and it's something that we should all be working towards. But I also want to kind of talk to where we're actually at with things. And I think where we're actually at with things is sometimes we just need to eat the time as sort of the like cost of admission to learning how to do this job search process. I tend to look at job auditions, these like take-home assignments. Like for me, it would be a a resume review or a cover letter review or some sort of like mock interview, mock coaching call or something like that. And the way I look at it is just practice. I just chalk it all up to practice. This is helping me get better at job interviewing. So it might take a lot of time and it might be a lot of effort, but it's going to make every other job interview in the future easier if I have a positive mindset about it and I'm going about it the right way. And so, I don't know, I just basically look at everything as education, which I think makes doing a job audition or some of these small tasks, even if it feels like, are they trying to take advantage of me? Am I doing like a take-home assignment that they're going to go use? It does get into some dicey territory there. But I think looking at everything as an educational opportunity and then having a very positive mindset around it, I think is usually the way to keep yourself from falling into a rut when it comes to doing these sort of job auditions and small tasks. Some people feel that companies are more interested in free labor than hiring. I'm not sure if companies have their hiring process together enough that they're like using the online job postings as a labor farm. If they are doing that, they're probably a smaller company. But I don't know. Disagree with me in the comments if you think that companies are really trying to get free labor rather than hire someone good. I mean, from my experience, a bunch of outlines and ideas and a take-home assignment that can be done in a couple of days or a week isn't going to be enough for a company to go build an entire strategy around. And then I wanted to just follow up on yesterday's live video where we talked about the legalization of marijuana and cannabis and all that good stuff in Chicago. I find it to be very interesting that on the one hand, we are legalizing an entire new sector of the smoking world, and at the exact same time, we are banning an entire section of the smoking world. I don't really smoke, so none of this really affects me. But but it is a very interesting duality and look at how the world is operating in my mind. I think it's super interesting that there was another article I was reading this morning that I can't find anymore, but it's talking about how we've got like 3.5 million in sales already in Chicago, I think, for cannabis sales. And at the same time, smokers and vapors need not apply. We raised the age limit for who could smoke from 18 to 21 federally, I believe, which makes a whole lot of smokers suddenly unable to buy their vapes and whatnot. Probably a good move with all the vaping stuff that's been happening in the news. But U-Haul is the latest employer looking to build a nicotine-free workforce. I've never heard of this before. The Arizona-based company said it will not interview nor hire nicotine users starting February 1st. That seems like a very difficult thing to enforce in a company. I'd be very curious to see how that plays out. What if someone picks up smoking after they've been hired? Just seems like on the one hand, things are becoming more and more open. On the other hand, they're becoming more and more strict. Arizona is among several states that allow employers to make hiring decisions based on smoking. The policies are becoming more common as companies look to cut healthcare costs. The city of Toledo, Ohio, stopped hiring nicotine users on July 15th. Some healthcare providers, such as CHI Memorial in Tennessee, also impose nicotine bans. Meanwhile, there's probably still McDonald's in hospitals. So what a weird world we live in. As long as they don't ban coffee from my workplace, which is my home, so that's never going to happen. Have at it. Have at it, folks. Do whatever you're trying to do. I don't know.